Good evening, guys. Welcome to part one of your review for your unit test. We're going to go through basically everything that was on that first quiz that you got back today during class. You'd seen it a while ago, but we had a bunch of absent students. It was about a week and a half ago, so we'll go through that tonight, and then tomorrow we'll go through the rest of it. I just want you to see all the learning targets we've done since the start of the unit. There's actually been quite a bit of things. Notice the one down here with the star on it says I can translate between two-column proofs and flowchart proofs. That's the one you did with your project that you will not have to do on this test. Alright? So this whole list of things is everything that you need to know how to do for Thursday. Just so you know, the first two, that you can measure angles with a protractor, and you can draw them with a protractor, I'm not going to go through again in this review. We've used the protractors throughout the unit. I don't think I need to go over that. If you're struggling with that and you still aren't quite getting it very well, you're more than welcome if you go search on YouTube, and you can search for measuring angles with a protractor. There should be plenty of other videos out there that you can look at. But I'm not going to take your time up with the review and do that. Okay. The first learning target I'm going to look at says I can identify special angle pairs formed by parallel lines and transversals. This is simply, can you tell me where these things are? All right. So for instance, if I had, let's get this colors right. All right. Let's say I had this angle and this angle. I might say identify what kind of angles those are. And so given the list, given all your options, you need to know which ones those are. When I look at them, and I may need to turn my head a little sideways because my lines are sideways, I see they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So one's on the kind of right up top side and one's on the bottom, like left side of this transversal here that's in the middle. So opposite sides tell me right away I only really kind of have two options, alternate interior and alternate exterior. I then look and I notice, hey, they're on the outside of those two lines. They're not between them, but on the outside. So that tells me, oh, let me get my highlighter out here. That tells me that those are alternate exterior angles, right? So that's what this indicator wants you to, or this learning target wants you to do. It simply wants to identify what type of angles they are, okay? What if I moved them like this? What kind of angles are those? Anybody? I really hope you answered out loud. Those are adjacent angles, all right? They're attached. They have this piece here, this ray here that is stuck to both of them. They are attached. Notice, though, the difference, if I move that one over there, what kind of angles are those? Yeah, they're vertical, right? Vertical doesn't necessarily, not because it's straight up and down, but because they're across from each other, or diagonal. This here is also a set of vertical angles. They're across from each other when the two lines make an X. Okay? So again, you got to just make sure you know each type of these angles listed here. You need to know which ones are which and be able to tell me which they are. Yes, you're more than welcome to abbreviate when you do this on the test. But again, if you abbreviate, make sure I know, don't abbreviate with the letter A, because A could stand for angle for all I know. All right, so make sure you get it all on there. All right, I know, lots of stuff on the screen. Y'all know my projector's broken, so I had to type it ahead of time. All right. Here we go. So, next learning target. I know the relationships between special angle pairs formed by parallel lines in a transversal. Alright? So, you have to know the relationships, so you literally have to know your postulates and your theorems, right? Corresponding angles postulate. If the two lines are parallel, then corresponding angles are congruent. Vertical angles theorem. If two angles are vertical, then they are congruent. So you need to know all of these. I'm not going to read them to you. You can always read them yourself. If you need to pause the video and look at them, you can. You should know these, okay? The second thing you have to be able to do with this learning target is if I give you an example, if I give you a picture, and I say find the question mark angle, if I've told you these two lines are parallel, you do not need to measure this. A lot of people made that mistake on the quiz, and they went through and they measured all of them when they're not necessarily drawn to scale. You think to yourself, what kind of angles are those? I see corresponding angles, the 130 and the question mark. They're kind of in the same spot, right? At each little crossing thing, they're on the top left, okay? So if they're in the same spot, corresponding angles, we just said if two lines are parallel, then corresponding angles are congruent. So that tells me the answer to this is simply 130 degrees. right? You don't have to measure anything. You don't necessarily have to write it next to the question mark. You gotta write it somewhere, maybe circle it if you write kind of messy so I can make sure I know where everything is. Okay? The other type would be, if the 130 was inside, now what kind of angles are those? Yeah, they're same side, interior. And we know, according to our theorem, if two lines are parallel, then same side interior angles are supplementary. So I have to kind of off to the side, and you can do this in your head. You can, if you need a calculator, you can have it. Hopefully you don't need one. I think to myself, well, what's 180 minus 130? Do a little math, and it is in fact 50 degrees. All right. So when you do this, do make sure you kind of circle that last answer, box it in somehow, so I know that the answer is 50 that I'm looking for. Okay. That's all you have to do with this learning target. Not too bad. All right, this is the one. Most people actually did better on this than on the previous stuff, which really confused me, but I think we just had a lot more practice with this. Okay. First one, learning target says I can solve simple algebraic problems involving the relationships between special angle pairs, and then I can solve complex algebraic problems. So the one you see in front of you would be one of the simple ones, right? You have to say, are these going to be congruent or are they going to be supplementary? And this pair of angles is going to be congruent. So you set up your equation, 3x minus 7 equals 2x plus 43. And you solve for x that way, okay? So if they're equal, that's how you set them up, if they're congruent. But if I move this 3x, let's move this 2x plus 41 out here. Now, what do you notice about them? Yeah, they should be supplementary. So you're going to do 3x minus 7 plus 2x plus 43. And that's going to add up to 180, because that's exactly what supplementary means. And then again, you're going to do your algebra and solve for x. The only time you need to plug back in once you find x is if the directions say find the measurement. So the directions could say this. It could say solve for x. And if it says solve for x, then literally solve for x. Don't do anything after that. The one where you have to plug back in will say find the measure of the angle. This is the one where you have to plug back in. If it says as the final thing find a measure of an angle, then you've got to plug it back in. Okay? So, two different directions. They could say solve for x. They could say find the measure of the angle. The complex ones, I'm not going to give you any crazy ones. Really, I'm not. Okay? But here's the idea. The complex ones are complex only because they typically involve three angles. Let's put this one right back here. Okay. So I have three angles happening here. I have the angle that's 3x minus 7. I have the angle that's 2x plus 43, and I have angle 3. And these directions want to find the measure of angle 3. So the idea is you first have to solve for x, just like you did on the last problems, and then you've got to figure out which one do I plug back in for. Okay? So we're going to walk through this pretty quickly. This is the last example for tonight. 3x minus 7 equals 2x plus 43. Alright, so that's our first setup. This is going to be really kind of hard to show the algebra on, guys, but I'll do my best to get it typed in here. We're going to add the 7 first to both sides. Okay, and that's going to give us 3x equals 2x plus 50. Then I'm going to minus the 2x from both sides. And that's going to give us x equals 50. Alright, now on the quiz, a lot of you guys got to this point. A lot of people knew how to set up the problem, and they knew to solve for x. The problem is that x equals 50 is not the measure of angle 3. I want to know how big that angle is. So I look at my other two angles that I know, and I think, well, are either one of them equal to angle 3? Alright, and there's two ways you can look at this. I see this up here, and I see that, hey, 3x minus 7 is a vertical angle with angle 3. We know those are congruent. But other people might say, hey, I see, sorry guys, that's my phone. I see that 2x plus 43 is alternate interior with angle 3, and those are also equal. Which makes sense, because weren't those two angles equal to each other in the first place? So if they're equal to each other, and one of them's equal to angle 3, the other one's equal to angle 3. Anybody remember the name of that property? And it's the transitive property. The idea is all three of these angles are equal to each other. So I could take x equals 50 and plug it into either one I want to plug it into. I'm going to plug it into the first one just because I want to. So 3 times 50 minus 7, that's going to be, well, 3 times 50 is 150 minus 7, and that's going to be 143 degrees. And there is my answer. That is the measure of angle 3. Okay? So, problems like this, honestly, this first part over here, the algebra done in white, not worth as many points as this ending part of knowing how to get to angle 3 from what you already know, right? If I put a lot of points on this first part, then I'm not judging your complexity here. Like, this is stuff you already know how to do. This is the pretty easy part. I want to know, can you get from solving for x, to figuring out this other weird angle that you need? Okay? So like I said, that's it for tonight. Tomorrow night, we are going to go through, we'll start down here. We've got the converse of all of these. So that's where I say, are the two lines parallel? Give me proof. We'll talk about how to explain the flowchart proofs, and then all of this hit and bounce stuff that we've been doing over the last couple days. So that's it. Look at that, only 11 minutes. I'm not too bad tonight. So good luck on your unit test, and I will see you tomorrow.